Amina had always been a quiet woman, someone who tried to keep her problems inside her heart instead of placing them on other people. But life had become too heavy, and her strength was beginning to break. The small village she lived in had never been easy, but after her husband passed away from a sudden sickness, everything changed for her. She was left alone with a small child, a little boy who was too young to understand why his father did not come home anymore. Amina tried her best to smile at him, even when her hands were trembling with fear every night. She worked in neighbors' houses, washed utensils, cleaned courtyards, and sometimes sewed torn clothes for a few coins. But work was not steady, and money was always less than what she needed. There were many days she went hungry so that her child could eat. As winter came close, things became worse. Villagers began preparing for the cold season, storing wood, drying grains, and keeping animals safe. But Amina had none of those things. Her room was small and cold. The wind entered through the cracks in the walls, and she had only one thin blanket to wrap around her child. She tried to sew thicker clothes out of old fabric, but they were not enough to protect him from the harsh wind. The little boy often cried from hunger or cold in the night, and Amina would cradle him close to her chest, whispering that everything would be all right, even though she did not know how. One evening, after 3 long days without proper food, her child cried so much that her heart almost tore apart. His face was pale, and his tiny hands were shaking. She tried giving him warm water to calm him, but it did not help. He needed real food, milk, bread, anything. Her neighbors were kind in small ways, giving her leftovers sometimes. But lately, even they had little to spare because of the cold season. Amina felt as if every door around her was slowly closing. She sat on the floor of her small room holding her child, listening to his weak sobs, and felt tears run down her cheeks. She had no strength left. That night, she made a decision she had never imagined she would have to make. There was one person in the village whom she had always avoided speaking to because he was known to be quiet, distant, and sometimes harsh with his words. His name was Remen. He lived on a small farm at the edge of the village, taking care of cows, goats, and fields all by himself. People said he had suffered many losses to his parents passed away when he was young, and later his brother died in an accident. After that, he became a man who worked hard but talked little. Some villagers respected him, some feared him. No one really knew how he felt inside. Amina had never asked anything from him, but that night she realized she had no other choice. If she did not swallow her pride and go to him, her child would not survive. She wrapped her son in the only blanket she had, held him close, and stepped outside. The wind hit her face immediately, cold and sharp, but she kept walking. The path to Remen's farm was dark and quiet. Her feet were numb, and her arms hurt from carrying her child, but she forced herself to move forward. Every step felt like a prayer she whispered into the night. When she finally reached the farm, she saw a dim light coming from the small house. She gathered all her courage and knocked on the wooden door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she heard slow footsteps, and the door opened. Remen stood there wearing an old sweater and holding a lantern. His serious face softened a little when he saw her shivering with her child in her arms. "Amina?" he asked, confused. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Amina tried to speak, but her voice broke. Her eyes filled with tears, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She felt ashamed, scared, and desperate all at once. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "Please," she whispered. "My child. He has not eaten properly in days. I cannot watch him suffer anymore." Remen's expression changed. The sternness in his eyes faded, replaced by concern. He looked at the child, whose face was buried in Amina's shoulder. Too weak even to cry properly, Amina continued speaking, her voice trembling. "I will do anything any honest work. I can milk your cows, clean your home, take care of your animals, keep your house warm in the cold nights. I only ask for food for my child. I am not here to beg. I just want to work, want him to survive." Her tears fell freely now. She did not have the strength to hide them. She tried to explain herself properly, making sure he understood she was not asking for charity. She wanted to earn whatever she received. Remen did not interrupt her. He stood silently, listening to every word. When Amina finished, She felt her knees weaken. She thought he might refuse, or worse, think badly of her. But she had taken the risk because she had no other hope. After a long moment, Ramon stepped aside and said gently, "Come inside. The child must be cold." Ramona hesitated, but he nodded again. She entered slowly, holding her child close. The small house was warm from a burning stove. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Remen quickly brought a bowl of warm milk and placed it on the table. "Sit," he said, pulling a chair for her. Amina sat down carefully, and Remen handed her the bowl so she could feed her child. The little boy opened his eyes weakly and leaned toward the warm milk. Kema helped him drink slowly, tears falling from her eyes as she watched relief spread over his tiny face. Remen watched silently, his heart tightening at the sight. He had seen hardship before, but seeing Amina in such a broken state made him feel something unexpectedly heavy inside. He realized she must have suffered alone for a long time to reach this point. "You don't have to offer yourself like that," he said quietly. "You only need honest work. Nothing more. You're not alone now." Amina wiped her tears and nodded. She felt relief, shame, and gratitude all at once. "I can work hard," she whispered. "Just tell me what to do." Remen nodded again. "You will start tomorrow. You can help with the cows, clean the barn, and do simple household work. And don't worry about your child. You'll get food here." Mina lowered her head, overwhelmed. "Thank you," she said softly. "I won't forget your kindness." Remen did not reply, but inside he was thinking about how courage it must have taken for her to come. He respected that. He respected her honesty and her strength as a mother. Before she left that night, Remen gave her some fresh bread and a small pouch of rice to take home. He also wrapped her child in an extra shawl that he kept near the stove. "You can return this tomorrow," he said, trying not to make her feel small. Amina took it with shaking hands. She whispered another quiet thank you and walked back into the cold night. But this time, the weight on her heart was lighter. Hope had returned to her, even if only a little, when she reached her small home. She placed her child on the bed, watching him sleep with a peaceful face she had not seen in days. She sat beside him, touching his hair gently, and allowed herself to breathe again. For the first time in many months, she felt that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would not be as dark as yesterday. And far away, on his quiet farm, Remen sat by the stove, thinking about the woman who came to him in the cold night with tears in her eyes and courage in her steps. He did not know why, but her words and her desperation had stayed with him. He knew he had made the right choice by helping her. Something inside him told him that this was only the beginning of a story neither of them expected. Amina did not sleep much that night. Even though her child was resting peacefully after drinking warm milk, her mind kept repeating everything that had happened. She had never imagined she would walk to Remen's farm in the cold dark, tears in her eyes, begging for any kind of work she could do. Yet life had pushed her to a point where pride no longer mattered, only her child's survival did. She held her son close throughout the night, whispering prayers of gratitude because he finally slept without hunger, twisting his little stomach. When dawn approached, she rose quietly. Her small room was still cold, but her heart felt warmer than it had in months. For the first time, she had a direction of hope. She washed her face with cold water, tied her scarf tightly, and wrapped her child in the shawl Remen had given her. She walked to the farm again, this time with steps that felt heavy but determined. She wanted to prove her worth. She wanted to show Remen that she meant every word she had spoken the night before as she approached the farm. She saw smoke rising from the chimney. The animals were awake. She could hear the soft sounds of cows moving inside the barn. The morning light touched everything with a soft glow. Amina felt nervous, unsure if she belonged in such a place. But she pushed her doubts aside and knocked on the door. Remen opened it almost immediately, as if he had been expecting her. His expression was serious but not unkind. He stepped aside to let her enter. "You came early," he said. "I wanted to start work on time," Amina replied softly. Remen nodded. "That's good." Inside the house, the stove was burning again, warming the room. Remen had already prepared some tea and a simple breakfast. He pointed to the table. "Eat something first. Then we will begin." Mina hesitated. She was not used to being served anything. She usually ate after others, taking the leftovers. But Riemann insisted quietly. "You need strength," he said. "You will work hard. Sit." So she sat and ate a small piece of bread and drank tea while Riemann prepared a little bowl of milk for her child. The boy drank happily, his face brighter than the day before. Seeing him like that filled Amina with relief she could not express. After breakfast, Riemann showed her around the farm. He explained the daily tasks calmly in his deep voice. "These cows need to be milked every morning," he said, pointing to the large brown cow near the gate. "And the barn must stay clean. The goats also need feeding. I will handle the heavy work." Amina listened carefully, nodding. She wanted to learn everything properly. Riemann watched her for a moment before adding, "If anything feels too hard, tell me. You don't have to push yourself to the point of pain." Amina lowered her eyes. "I can manage. I want to be useful." "You already are," he replied quietly. "You came here with honesty. That is enough." His words surprised her. She did not know how to respond. Few people had spoken to her with such respect since her husband passed away. They began working. Amina followed Riemann to the barn. The cows were calm, their breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. He showed her how to approach them slowly, how to talk softly so they would not get scared. His hands were steady as he demonstrated the milking process. And Amina watched closely. "Try," he said after a moment. Amina took a deep breath and moved closer. Her hands trembled at first, but she remembered her promise to herself to show her worth. She gently tried the milking motion, and to her relief, she succeeded. Milk began filling the tin bucket slowly. She looked at Riemann, unsure if she was doing it right. He nodded once. "Good." Just that single word felt like a reward. She continued working carefully, her confidence rising little by little as the hours passed. She cleaned the barn, swept the floor, and fed the goats. She worked quietly, but inside she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Purpose. Her body was tired, yet it was a different kind of tiredness. One she could endure because it meant her child would not go hungry. Riemann worked beside her, doing the heavier tasks, lifting sacks of grain, repairing broken wooden planks, carrying buckets of water. He did not speak much, but his presence felt steady and safe. Whenever she struggled with something, he would silently step forward and help without making her feel weak. By noon, both of them were covered in dust and sweat, but the farm looked cleaner and more organized than before. Amina wiped her forehead with her scarf and sat on a small wooden stool to rest. Her child crawled around nearby on a warm patch of blanket Riemann laid out for him. "You did well," Riemann said, as he filled a jug of water for the animals. Amina looked up, surprised. No one had praised her in a long time. "I tried my best," she said. "You succeeded," he replied. Simple words, but they hit her heart deeply. Riemann went inside the house and returned with lunch rice and lentils. He placed a plate in front of Amina and another beside her for the child. She stared at the food, feeling a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. "You don't need to worry," Riemann said before she could speak. "You are working here now. Food is part of your work." Amina nodded, her throat tight with emotion. The afternoon passed quietly. Amina washed dishes, swept the front area of the house, and helped Riemann check the animals again. Her child napped in a warm corner. Wrapped in the shawl Riemann had lent her, the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Amina stood outside the barn, watching the light change. She felt tired, but peaceful. For the first time in months, she did not have to worry about whether she had enough to feed her child that night. Riemann walked toward her, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You worked hard today," he said. "You should go home and rest." Amina nodded and picked up her child. Before leaving, she hesitated. "I will return the shawl tomorrow," she said softly. Riemann shook his head. "Keep it. It is cold these days." Amina looked down at the shawl, feeling tears rise again, not from sadness this time, but from relief that someone cared enough to think of her child's comfort. "Thank you," she whispered. Riemann simply nodded, as if it was the most natural thing to do. Amina walked home under the darkening sky. But unlike the night before, she did not feel hopeless. She held her child close and felt warmth spread inside her. She had a job now, a place that needed her, and a man who treated her with dignity. These small things were more precious to her than anything else in the world. When she reached home, she prepared a small fire, warmed the leftover food Remen had given her, and fed her child. He ate happily and fell asleep quickly, wrapped in the warm shawl. Amina sat beside him, watching his peaceful face. She remembered how she stood at Remen's door, crying and begging for honest work. She remembered how he listened without judgment. And now she remembered how he treated her not as a burden, not as someone to pity, but as a partner in work. As the night grew colder outside, Mina felt a new strength growing inside her. For the first time in a long while, she believed that maybe her life could change. Maybe her child could grow up safe. Maybe she could stand on her own feet again and somewhere across the fields. In the farmhouse lit by a single lantern, Remen sat alone at his table, thinking about the quiet woman who worked all day with courage in her heart and pain in her eyes. He respected her determination. He admired the way she cared for her child. And he knew, without fully admitting it, that their lives had begun to connect in a way neither had planned but both needed. It was the start of something new for both of them. Something fragile yet hopeful. Something that would soon grow into a bond stronger than either of them could imagine. Amina woke up before sunrise the next morning, just as she had always done. But this time, her heart did not feel heavy. Her child slept peacefully beside her, wrapped warmly in the shawl Remen had given her. She stroked his small hand gently and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Life had taken a softer turn, and though she did not know what the future held, she felt a glimmer of hope she had not felt in years. After preparing her child for the day, she walked back to the farm. The cold air made her breath visible, but she did not shiver as much. Her body was getting used to the routine, and her mind felt steadier. When she reached the farm, she saw Remen, already outside, feeding the animals. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. "You're early again," he said. Amina smiled shyly. "There's much work to do," Remen nodded. His expression was calm, but inside he appreciated her dedication more than he ever said. He had lived alone for years, speaking to no one except his animals. He had grown used to silence. But now, the farm felt different. It had a quiet warmth he had not felt since childhood. The morning work went smoothly. Amina had learned how to milk the cows properly, how to feed the goats without making them restless, and how to clean the barn in an orderly way. She worked with determination, her movements slow but confident. Remen noticed how she talked softly to the animals, as if calming them with her gentle voice. They responded to her kindness, standing calmly during chores. Around midday, Remen handed her a cup of warm tea. Amina accepted it with both hands, grateful for the warmth. Her child was nearby, playing with a small wooden toy Remen had carved the previous evening. The toy was simpler, small cow made of leftover wood, but the boy loved it more than anything. He kept laughing as he tapped it on the ground. Amina watched her child, and for a moment her eyes softened. "He hasn't laughed like this in months," she said quietly. Remen looked at the boy and nodded. "Children need safety before they can laugh freely." Amina lowered her head. "I couldn't give him that before." "You are giving it to him now," Remen replied. Those words stayed with her. She had always felt like she was failing as a mother. But here, for the first time, someone told her she was doing something right. The days turned into weeks, and the farm slowly changed. The barn looked cleaner. The cows seemed healthier. The house felt more orderly. And most importantly, Amina and her child looked stronger. Her son's cheeks grew rounder, his eyes brighter. He followed Amina around the farm, holding her scarf or hiding behind her skirt when he felt shy. The villagers began noticing the changes too. Some whispered that Amina had become more confident. Others said that Remen had softened since she came. People were curious, but both Amina and Remen ignored the gossip. They focused on the work, the child, and the steady routine that brought comfort to them both. One evening, after a long day of repairing a broken fence, Amina sat near the barn while her child slept on a blanket nearby. The sky was painted orange, fading slowly into purple as the sun dipped behind the hills. She watched the colors change, feeling a sense of peace she had not felt in years. Remen approached quietly and stood beside her. "It will rain soon," he said, looking at the sky. Amina nodded. "Yes, I can feel it." There was a comfortable silence between them. They did not need to talk much. Their shared work and daily struggles had created a bond of understanding that did not require many words. Remen finally spoke. "Amina, you have worked very hard these past weeks. I want you to know that you don't have to worry about food or shelter anymore." Amina looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Remen took a slow breath, as if choosing his words carefully. "You don't have to think of this as temporary work. You can stay here as long as you want. You have a place here now." Her eyes widened. "I don't understand." Remen continued in a steady voice. "You came here in a moment of great fear. But since then, you have given this farm life again. You take care of the animals, the house, and your child, with dedication. You have helped me more than you know." Amina felt her throat tighten. "I only did what I had to do to keep my child alive." "And you did it with strength," Remen said. "Not everyone has that." Amina looked down at her hands. They were rough from work, but they were also steady. For months she had felt helpless, but now she realized she had been learning to stand again. "Remen," she whispered, "I don't want to be a burden on anyone." "You are not a burden," he said firmly. "You are a help, and your child is welcome here too." Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from being understood, maybe for the first time since her husband's death. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed to show emotion. Remen noticed, but he did not comment. He quietly picked up the sleeping child and handed him gently to Amina. "Take him inside. It's getting cold." That night, Amina lay awake, thinking about Rahman's words. She had come to the farm with fear in her heart, expecting only temporary help, but Rahman was offering her stability, something she'd never expected again. She wondered why he trusted her so much. She wondered how she could repay that trust. The next morning, a heavy rainstorm arrived. The wind howled, and the animals grew restless. Amina and Remen worked side by side, tying ropes, closing windows, and making sure the animals were safe. Amina held her child against her chest with one arm while she helped move baskets of grain with the other. Remen told her repeatedly to stay inside, but she refused. She didn't want to leave him to do all the work alone. They worked together until the storm settled. After the rain, the farm smelled fresh and earthy. Everything glistened under the soft sunlight that followed. Remen sat on the doorstep, exhausted. Amina brought him warm tea, her hands still trembling from the cold. "You should rest," she said. "You should too," he replied with a small smile. She hesitated before sitting down beside him. Her child played nearby, his laughter mixing with the soft sound of raindrops dripping from the roof. Remen watched Amina for a moment and said, "Do you know something? This farm was silent for years. I worked, but there was no life here. No reason to speak. No one to share the day with." Amina looked at him quietly. "But since you came," he said, "the silence has changed. Your presence brought warmth. Your child brought joy. I didn't realize how empty this place was until you filled it." Amina felt her heart tremble. No one had spoken to her like this before, not with flattery, but with honesty. "I didn't do anything special," she said softly. "You did," Remen said. "You stayed strong when life tried to break you. You protected your child with everything you had, and you worked without complaining. That is something rare." Amina lowered her eyes, overwhelmed. Remen continued gently, "I want you to think of this farm as your home now. You don't need to ask for permission to stay. You and your child have a place here." Amina felt her breath catch. Home. The word felt heavy on her heart, heavy and beautiful. She had not used that word since her husband died. For years, she had been moving, surviving, struggling. But now, someone was offering her a place she could belong. She looked at Remen, her voice trembling. "Thank you for everything." Rahman nodded. "You don't need to thank me. Just stay. Work with me. That is enough." Amina smiled softly, and for the first time her smile reached her eyes. Days turned into more weeks, and the bond between them grew slowly, naturally. Amina became part of the farm completely. She woke early, worked patiently, and cared for the animals as if the place belonged to her. Her child followed Remen around like a little shadow, learning small things about farming and animals. Sometimes Remen would sit with the child on his lap, showing him how to hold seeds or how to stroke a gentle cow. Amina watched from a distance, her heart full. Her son had found a father-like presence she never thought he would have again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amina stood at the front gate of the farm, watching the peaceful land around her. Her child held her hand, giggling at a butterfly flying near the flowers. Remen stood a few steps behind them, hands in his pockets, silent but content. In that moment, Amina realized something important. She was no longer a desperate mother, begging at a stranger's door. She was a strong woman who had rebuilt her life with courage, hard work, and dignity. She had found a place where she and her child were safe. She had found a man who saw her worth without asking anything. It's unfair in return, and most importantly, she had found a new beginning. The farm, once quiet and lonely, now had laughter, warmth, and hope. Amina and Remen did not know what the future held, but they knew one thing for sure: they were no longer alone. Their lives had joined together in a way that brought strength to both of them, and that was the true beginning of their new life.